What happens when a man wakes up tired and no one bothers to ask why? Ignored by doctors, dismissed by family, and pushed toward a nursing home, he seemed all but forgotten. But what happened next made him a national voice, and no one saw it coming. I wake up every single morning at 6:03, not 6, not 6:05, exactly 6:03. As if someone up there is sitting with a stopwatch whispering, "Rise and shine, old man, another day of proving them wrong." So I sit on the edge of my bed, clutching my knees, waiting for my legs to negotiate with my brain and agree to cooperate. Name's Henry Ford. Yeah, like the car guy. Only my ride is a rusted-out Buick, and the only thing I manufacture these days is disappointment, mostly in the eyes of my kids. But I still deliver bread and a newspaper to the old lady across the street every morning. Not because I'm some saint, because someone has to. Her son? Please. The man lives 10 miles away and calls once a month to ask for the alarm code he never remembers. Her grandson? He'd rather post a picture of his breakfast online than bring her actual breakfast. It was pouring rain, the kind of rain that soaks through your bones and makes you wonder if umbrellas are just decorative lies. But I made it, handed her the goods, listened to 20 minutes of cat stories — she doesn't own a cat, but I let it slide — and headed back. That's when the trouble showed up. Right on schedule. "Dad," my daughter Susan greeted me at the porch. Susan, a woman with the emotional warmth of a fax machine. "We asked you not to go out in this weather. And I asked you not to marry Dan, but we all make choices, don't we?" I grumbled, shaking off the rain. "Look, I know I'm cranky, but I've earned it. You survived Vietnam, 2 mortgages, and prostate surgery. You get to say whatever the heck you want." Then Dan slithered out behind her, like a backup act you never asked for. "We're just worried about you, Henry. This isn't funny anymore. You're not managing well." Not managing? Let me tell you something. I may move slower now, but I'm still in charge. Problem is, when you're over 70, they stop hearing what you say. Every complaint? Just age. Every ache? Normal. Every damn thing? Well, you're not 30 anymore. Then came that morning. I was making eggs. Same routine as always. Back was screaming at me like an overpaid gym coach, but I kept going. Because I'm still a man, and I don't surrender to discomfort. Until I dropped the pan. Not slipped. Dropped. My hand gave out like a cheap lawn chair. Eggs hit the floor. Oil splattered my feet. My pride cracked louder than the yolks. My granddaughter Sarah ran in, barefoot and wide-eyed. "Grandpa? What happened? Your hand's shaking." I looked down. It was. Shaking like a leaf in a wind tunnel. Her face turned pale. That scared me more than the damn eggs. I'm supposed to be the rock in this house. Suddenly, I felt like the warning label. She made an appointment with her doctor. Not mine. Mine's older than me and blames everything on the passage of time. Hers? Young. Too young. Still had that look in his eyes like he hadn't been broken by life yet. That irritated me. But I went. Because she asked. Because she still looked at me like I was worth saving. The clinic was too clean, too white. Felt like a fridge. The doctor asked a million questions. Sleep, appetite, walking, bathroom. I wanted to ask, "Have you ever lived in a 74-year-old body, son?" But I stayed polite. He ordered tests, blood work, vitamin panels, thyroid this, magnesium that. I nodded. But inside, something was boiling. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about getting older. Maybe they'd all been wrong. Maybe they hadn't been listening at all. And now? Now things were starting to unravel. The next week crawled by. Sarah kept checking in, texting me like I was her teenage son out past curfew. Did you eat today? Did you drink water? How are your hands? Sweet girl. But I was one step away from having to send her a selfie with a sandwich just to get her off my back. I felt embarrassed, not because of her concern, but because I couldn't answer her honestly. Some days, I didn't eat until dinner. I didn't feel hungry. My mouth was dry. Coffee tasted like cardboard. I caught myself staring at the walls, forgetting what I walked into a room for. The worst part? I was getting used to it. One night, I tried going through some old boxes in the garage. Thought maybe a bit of cleaning would spark something. A memory? A smile? Hell, even some sweat. But 10 minutes in, I had to sit on an overturned bucket, holding my ribs and breathing like I'd run a marathon. I used to carry railroad ties with my bare hands. Now I was winded by cardboard. I called my old friend Walter. Army buddy. Lives 3 states over. You ever get tired just standing still? I asked. He laughed. All the time. I just figured it's the price of outliving our generation. That stuck with me. Is this what it meant to survive? To feel like a fading ghost in your own home? The test results finally came in. And the call from the doctor? Let's just say it wasn't what I expected. But we'll get to that. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolds. You'd think after 74 years of life, there's nothing left that could surprise you. Wrong. Turns out, life saves its nastiest curveballs for when you're least expecting them, preferably when your back already hurts, your knees are making noises like a haunted door hinge, and you can't remember if you took your pills or just talked about taking them. The doctor called at 9:17 a.m. I was sitting on the porch with my 3rd cup of coffee. Because the first 2 tasted like wet cardboard and regret. His voice was too calm. That fake calm, the kind they teach you in med school to sound like you're not about to ruin someone's day. Mr. Ford, we've reviewed your labs, and I'd like you to come in to discuss them. You don't ask someone to come in unless it's bad. You just don't. If everything's fine, you call and say, "Looks good. See you next year." But no, he wanted to look me in the eye. Great. I hung up, stared at my coffee, wondered if the caffeine had ever done me any good at all. Sarah insisted on driving me. She tried to act casual, but I could see the panic peeking through the corners of her smile. Maybe it's just a vitamin deficiency, she said. Could be B12, or iron, or magnesium, or maybe I'm just falling apart like an old deck chair and they finally found the cracked hinge. She didn't laugh. That worried me more than the appointment. The doctor's office felt colder than usual. Or maybe that was just my nerves. I sat down across from him. He opened a folder. Big mistake. If it were good news, he wouldn't need a folder. Mr. Ford, he began, some of your symptoms could be attributed to aging, yes. But your lab work indicates you have severe chronic fatigue syndrome, likely compounded by undiagnosed sleep apnea, possible low testosterone levels, and a condition called adrenal insufficiency. It's not uncommon in your age group, but it's rarely caught. Great. A medical bingo card of stuff nobody ever talks about at family dinners. So what now? I asked. He listed off treatments, diet changes, a CPAP machine, supplements, blood work monitoring, lifestyle shifts. Nothing sounded simple. Nothing sounded like, take a pill and you're back on the golf course. I nodded. Because that's what you do. You nod so the younger man in the white coat feels like he's in control. But inside, I was boiling. Because for years, I'd been dismissed, shrugged off, told, you're just old. And now it turns out, There was something, and nobody saw it. Not my old doctor, not my family, not even me. I walked out of that office like I'd just sat through a funeral. My own. Sarah squeezed my hand in the car. "We'll figure it out, Grandpa." I smiled at her, but inside, something was cracking. And that crack let in a thought I hadn't dared think before. Maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe the problem was everyone else assuming I didn't matter enough to be taken seriously. The next week, I tried following the advice. Changed my meals. Cut back on caffeine. Wore a ridiculous-looking device to sleep. But something else started to shift. Something less obvious. My tolerance. Susan came over with Dan that Sunday. I was sitting at the table trying to choke down some kale. Dan walked in like he paid the mortgage. "You still seeing that young doctor? You know, they push all kinds of trends these days. Sounds like a lot of marketing to me." I stared at him. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't just let it slide. "Dan," I said, slow and clear, "you sell printers. Don't tell me what's real medicine." Susan gasped. Dan blinked. I stood up. "Let me make something clear. I spent years raising 3 kids, working 2 jobs, and doing everything right. And not once did any of you think to ask if maybe, just maybe, something was actually wrong. You just wrote me off as old. So if I'm a little angry right now, that's not the fatigue talking. That's me waking up." Dan tried to speak. I held up a hand. "I'm tired, yes, but not tired enough to keep being treated like wallpaper." They left early. Sarah texted me later. "That was amazing." I didn't feel amazing. I felt empty. Like I'd finally screamed into a void and realized how quiet it had been all along. That night, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling. The CPAP machine hummed next to me. I thought about the years I'd lost. Not just to illness, but to silence. To being polite. To being the nice old man who doesn't make a fuss. Well, maybe it's time to make one. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay with me to see how I put them all in their place. Let me tell you something people don't admit out loud. When you're over 70, most folks expect you to shut up, sit down, and fade into the background, like some kind of dusty painting in the corner of a family home. Nice to glance at, but heaven forbid it talks. Well, I wasn't interested in playing that role anymore. Something inside me had shifted after that outburst with Dan and Susan. It wasn't just anger. It was clarity. A fierce, almost electric realization that if I didn't stand up now, loudly, unapologetically, they'd bury me with a whisper. I started making changes, real ones. Got rid of the foods that made me feel sluggish. Started walking in the mornings. Not just a stroll, but a pace that got my heart pumping. Not for them, for me. Neighbors noticed. Old Tom, 2 houses down, waved at me like I was back from war. "Henry," he said, "you're looking sharp." "Sharp enough to cut through bullshit," I replied. And it felt good. Then came the family dinner. Susan wanted us all to get together. "Like old times," she said. I didn't trust it. When someone uses phrases like, "just us," there's always an ambush baked into the lasagna. I was right. Dinner started normal enough. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes. Dan pretending to be useful by opening the wine. But then Susan cleared her throat like she was about to deliver a eulogy. "We've been talking," she said, glancing at her brothers. "And we think it might be time to talk about next steps." There it was, the phrase that sounds innocent but smells like betrayal. "Next steps?" I raised an eyebrow. "You've been forgetting things," said Brian, my oldest, who hadn't been to a single doctor's appointment with me in 10 years. "Dropping things, It might be safer. Don't finish that sentence, I warned. Dan couldn't help himself. There's a great assisted living facility just outside town, with activities. You'd love it. I'd rather live in a tent under the freeway. They blinked. You think this is love? I asked. You think putting me in a home because I got tired is care? You didn't care when I was struggling to stand? You didn't care when I was forgetting breakfast? Now that I'm fighting back, suddenly I'm a risk? Dad, we just want what's best for you. No, you want what's convenient. Sarah was silent. Her eyes met mine across the table. No pity, just fire. She got it. I stood up. Let me make something very clear. I've been dismissed, underestimated, and ignored by people half my age who couldn't last a day in my shoes. But from this point forward, I'm done being your burden. I'm your father. I'm not your project. And if anyone tries to push me into a box because it's easier to ignore me than face your own guilt, my voice cracked, not with weakness, with rage. I will burn that box down. They were speechless. For once, I left early. Didn't slam the door. Didn't need to. Silence is louder when it's earned. That night, I started writing. Not just thoughts, but everything. Memories, mistakes, moments. I realized something as I wrote. The world doesn't ignore you when you're loud. It ignores you when you're polite, when you wait your turn, when you don't make waves. So I started making waves. Letters to the editor. Online posts. I joined forums for seniors dealing with fatigue and medical neglect. I shared my story. I spoke up. And people listened. Emails started coming in. Messages from strangers. From men who said, I thought I was the only one. From women who said, my dad went through the same thing, and no one believed him. One morning, I got a call from a podcast producer. She wanted me to talk about medical ageism, how doctors and families dismiss real conditions just because someone has gray hair. I said yes. They thought I was fading, but I was just getting started. The final chapter is coming, and trust me, the ending is nothing like they expected. I wasn't planning to become a symbol. I just wanted to be heard, maybe respected. At the very least, not treated like a piece of antique furniture someone's too sentimental to throw out, but too indifferent to dust. But something strange happened once I spoke up. The world didn't shut me down. It leaned in. That podcast? It aired on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, my inbox was flooded. Not just with sympathy, but with recognition. Stories. People from every corner of the country saying, thank you for saying what I couldn't. A retired truck driver from Nevada, a former teacher in Ohio, a Vietnam vet in Florida who said he'd been told for years his exhaustion was all in his head. It wasn't in our heads. It was in their blindness. I was invited to speak at a local health panel on elder care. I stood on a stage for the first time since my daughter's wedding and told a room full of professionals exactly what it feels like to be treated like you've expired before your time. I didn't hold back. You know what fatigue is? It's not just being tired. It's being erased. It's waking up with a brain full of fog and a body that says, no thanks, and having everyone tell you it's normal, that it's your fault for aging, that it's your fault for surviving. The room was silent, not the polite kind, the kind where people realize they've been part of the problem. Afterward, a nurse came up to me in tears. She said her father died last year after being misdiagnosed 3 times. Said she wished she'd fought harder. I told her it's never too late to start fighting, even if the person you're fighting for is yourself. At home, Sarah was glowing. She started a blog to share our journey. She titled it, Tired, Not Done. And it went viral. Suddenly, The man everyone thought was too exhausted to argue became a voice people wanted to hear. Even Susan came around, slowly. She showed up one Sunday with a pie and no Dan. We sat on the porch. No big speech, no apology. Just quiet. "You were right," she said eventually. "We didn't listen. We thought we were helping." "You were protecting your peace," I said. "Not mine." She nodded. And for once, she didn't try to defend herself. That was enough. Months passed. My energy didn't come back all at once. Some days were still hard. But now, at least, I had language for it. I had people. I had purpose. I wasn't a ghost in my own house anymore. One morning, while sipping coffee on that same creaky porch, I watched a bluebird land on the railing. It looked straight at me, sharp, alert, unapologetically alive. And I laughed, because for the first time in years, I felt the same way. I might wake up tired, but I wake up fighting. They tried to write me off. Instead, I rewrote the story.